In this video we will show how to get started using center. So in the seismic interpretation tab here you will now find the center button on the ribbon menu here if you have installed the GeoDataSync deploy. So click on that button. The first time that you run this you will have to set up the license information. So before you reach this screen here, you will get information where you're prompted to enter the license information, either by choosing the license file, or in case of a floating license, you have to enter the license server. So typically a port number, and then the license server name. When that is completed, you will reach this screen here, and you have two options. And to start center, so if center is not already running, you can just select center here on the menu and click the Start Application. Then you can just close this screen. So this will start center, and the first time that you start center, it might take a little bit longer time than later on because it has to initialize some files. Also, you will probably be prompted with a Windows Firewall pop-up warning. This has to do with the parallelization that is technology that is used in center, and you can in fact just cancel that pop-up. You don't have to accept it to make it work, so it's just a side effect. So you can just cancel it and then ignore it, and then from there on out you will not see the pop-up anymore. So now center is running and we are in fact connected with Petrel. However, if center was already running and you don't have a connection to Petrel, you can just hit this button again and select the refresh connection, click the Start Application. So this will be changed a little bit in a future release, but we are kind of faking a start of the application here. You will get this message that the refresh connection cannot be run. Please check if it exists. Just ignore that. Please click OK. And what will happen is that we will now be able to click the connect button up here, and it will reconnect with Petrel. So that's a way for you to reconnect with Petrel in case, let's say that you have already center open and then you decide to open Petrel. So if you're changing the order of that. Another thing to take care of here is project synchronization. So in Petrel you have different projects, and you have to be inside a project to have access to this button here. But you could also be in a project like we are now and then decide to change to another project. And the connection will remain, but what you have to do is after you change or after you create a new project is to hit the project sync button. This is to have center check again which project is running and then synchronize whatever center is storing with the new project. center is storing a lot of its information inside the Petrel project, but some of the information does not fit into the Petrel project and has to be stored elsewhere. So center is creating a shadow project inside, to say so, and that shadow project contains then those extra files. And for the system to work, it has to be synchronized. We will look into automating this more in the future. Then we jumped over a button here, Preferences. So in Preferences here you have currently just two options, and they have to do with logging. So this is logging of actions that are taking place while you're running the software. It could be errors, but it can also be other information. So the first option here is that you can decide how detailed do you want the logging to be. So you can choose to log everything, debug information, and onward, or info information and onward, which means that you will not be logging debug and some other detailed information, or just the warnings and everything else down here, or error, or fatal error, or you can turn it off. The second option here is about pop-ups. So the geodatasync framework that we are using can sometimes generate pop-ups, and you can decide to hide them or to show only what the geodatasync is generating, or to show what Petrel and geodatasync is generating. The default setup is that info will be chosen for the logging level, and hide all pop-ups will be chosen here. You can change these, but these are the defaults. Where are error logs? It's logged in a file, and you can access that file by clicking on this button down here. So this will open up a notepad, and here you have information that is logged while the software is running. So in case you encounter a problem, it can be helpful if you provide us this file. Then of course that means that you need to actually do some logging. So maybe in some cases we want you to reproduce the error with turning on all to get a little bit more detailed information. But in general, having it at info will be sufficient. There is also the possibility to, as the tooltip here described, to hold down the Shift key and click on this button to reset the process status. This process here will show, if something is going on or if there is an error. And in some cases, maybe that error resides or it's hanging a little bit the information that is shown here. So you can hold down the Shift key and just click this to reset the display down here. So that's just a little workaround in case there is some unexpected behavior going on with the display. Then finally, the main thing in here is of course to access the modules, and that is done by clicking the C Enter symbol in the top left corner. And you have then the home screen is here. Then you have the risk module, the AVO RPT, and the RPM log module that we will dive into in the other videos. But there is one more thing that you should do during the setup here, and that is inside of Petrel you should go to templates, and we have prepared a couple of color maps that we find useful to use when inspecting the solutions. You can of course choose to use other color maps, but if you want to use these color maps, you can then right click, import, and then navigate to the installation folder of the C Enter, and there is a subfolder here called color maps, and you can choose to import these color maps. The last piece of information in this video is not that highly relevant, but it's just to explain a little bit of something that is happening behind the scenes. It goes a little bit, for example, back to what we talked about with the shadow projects. So C Enter is storing some files on your disk, and this is by default stored on your C drive users folder, your user folder, and then in a subfolder called C Enter. So here you will find some database files. Here is a data folder. It can be put in here, models, and there is a project thing. You don't normally have to go in here. This is also where you find a log file, for example. So you don't normally have to go in here, but we're just making you aware that this is being created. And in the future, there will be added some functionality in the preferences where you can make some choices on where this should be stored on your disk in case you don't want to store it in this location here. So that's it for getting started with C Enter. And in the next videos, we will look at the different modules.